Greetings and welcome to In Depth. I'm Dike Rostant. Now, 90 years and 4 generations later, and we're still sure that we're eating fresh bread daily with Chee Mooke Bakery. So we are speaking with Human Resources and Administration Manager Nathalie Phillips. She joins us to go in depth on this situation and how we can continue loving ourselves while minding our pockets. Hello, Nathalie. How are you doing?
Hi, how are you? I'm good. I hope you're also well, and your viewers. So I hope everybody's well as can be.
Yes, ma'am, we're good, and we want to thank you for making the time. Now, you literally have skin in the game, so everybody is speaking about flour and wheat flour. So I'll dive in straight with that. What are your thoughts on the current situation as it pertains to wheat flour and how it is we're dealing with it?
Well, I think that we need to develop some alternative sources of flour, and it means alternative recipes or formula, because wheat flour is very special in its qualities. And if we have to produce bread items, particularly bread, other things may not need the yeast, and we don't need to have them raised. But we would need to understand what are the other additives we would need to add to, say, cassava flour or any other kind of provision flour, to create that volume that we are familiar with in bread as we know it.
And I like the fact that you talk about research and development, and we get into that into just a bit, but to kind of bookend that first question, how have you or how has Chee Mooke been dealing with it at this point in time?
At the point, really, there's nothing else to do but ride the wave. We have to, right now, we're adjusting prices, so that process is going to take a while. So even though any of the mills raise prices, is not going to be an immediate increase in our pricing. I think our last increase actually was just at the end of May. So this hits us as quite a shock. And we will have to now go through the process of updating all the prices, seeing how much of it we can bear, because it may not be a price increase across the board, but there definitely will be some kind of minimal increases in maybe some items. And it will take some time to generate those figures, because there's so many different layers of information to handle when you're working on increase in prices.
And I really like the fact that you say that this may not be something, and the price may not increase across the board. And I'm looking at you, Mr. Bakery Man, who passed by me and increased every single thing by $1, but we ain't going to talk about it too much. But you also have different types of products, including those that have less wheat flour, like you just would have intimated. Some there's coconut, some there's cassava. What is the idea behind that? Is it just a matter of taste, or is it a matter of just saying something different? Take me through that process.
There's different ways of getting a product that can be healthier or can have more fiber, different sources of sugar, different ways of getting color into your product. Sometimes having color in a product is not just about adding a color, or for flavor, not adding a flavor. But if you want, there's no better flavor than coconut, than fresh coconut. You don't need to add coconut essence, per se, or to coconut drops. You don't add essence to drops, because all of the flavor naturally comes from the coconut, the grated coconut. So adding things like the grated coconut, putting in cassava definitely gives you a lot more nutritional value in, like, for our cassava bread. So there's different characteristics you add to a product if you add alternative things or additional ingredients, like adding raisins. How can you have a sweet bread without raisins? I mean, maybe something we could try, but I mean, our recipe, my grandmother's recipe, it always had raisins and preserved fruit in it. So those are actual little points of interest, for the palate, I would imagine.
And how long does that take? Because it's one thing to say, okay, well, yes, I'm doing this home, and we have guinea pigs, and you tell me you like it or you don't like it. But there's another thing to say, okay, well, this is something that we're going to be doing professionally. We have it for sale. So what kind of average, how does that process go? How long does it take normally?
It could take from a couple of days to a few weeks, according to what you try. Like, I have been experimenting with working on different types of cassava bread, which would be like cassava and whole wheat cassava, coconut, whole wheat, and trying to just do something that is even a bit healthier for people and a slightly different flavor point. And the first recipe, let's see, I didn't know, we didn't have a formula. So I said, okay, I like this particular whole wheat bread, I like this coconut bread, and I like this cassava bread. So let's take like 5 pounds of each and mix that together and see what we get. And then when we were happy with that particular bread, that product, I then came up with, I took the recipes or the formula for each of those different items and divided them into I prorated the numbers, and then we tried mixing that particular formula. Then if we were happy with it, I think we tweaked it a bit, and now we have one formula for that thing that I tried to make. And that took a couple of months to do, because then I remember I don't have a little kitchen here. I have to go based on our production and when the supervisor is able to do my experiments. So it takes a little longer for me to come up with, or any of us, if any of us are trying anything new, it takes a little while to get the product that we want, because it is based on when they have space and when the equipment is free in the production area. It's not as though I could walk into the production facility and say, hey, I want to mix this. I could do that, but I'm not going to get it one time. It will take me at least a day or two, because it's just not within the normal range of things that we do.
I still like the fact that you're able to, though, in the sense that you have an idea and you say, all right, I have a piece of a vision here, or I have a vision. Let's work towards it. And you have that opportunity, those windows, even though sometimes you may have to wait. And it feels as though this is something that is a lot more empowering. Is that something that you feel like? And this is even me kind of saying what you're talking about is blasphemy when you're talking about putting coconut essence, instead of just using coconut.
People do it, huh? But I think it is really, and the other part of the process is, like, what I've done is, when I try this cassava coconut whole wheat item, I actually went on Facebook and I asked some of my friends, are you all interested in trying? And several people wanted it, they tried it. So I actually, this was during COVID, so the shut down. So I actually had a version of a focus group. So people came, they collected their products, and then I got all the feedback. So I was able to then adjust the following recipes to help improve it. Right now, I'm still waiting on I think the third or fourth batch of the bread to decide if we're going to actually make it for general sale. And I would say, yes, it is important to know that any idea that we have, and this is the way that my father would have designed the bakery when he updated the equipment and the machinery here, that I can walk into the production facility and say, hey, I want to try this, and I could talk to the supervisor or family members, and it is really good to, and when the item is accepted, it is also a really cool thing. We have some products that employees have inspired, actually, which are still very popular with people. They had an idea, they mentioned it, and we tried it, and bam, it's for general sale.
Ms. Nathalie, I feel like I want to ask to get into one of them focus groups when they're happening next. But we continue the conversation when we return. We're speaking with Nathalie Phillips, Alternative Flour and the Bakery. Stay with us. We return with more. Welcome back. We are talking about Alternative Flour and the Bakery with Nathalie Phillips of Chee Mooke Bakery. And it seems as though even more than flour or bread or baked goods, this is building institutions, establishments, and relationships. And I started off with that talking about 90 years, 4 generations. What does that feel like to say, okay, well, this is something you're part of? Because I believe you started off being eye candy on the table, Nathalie, in Pampers. So take me through that feeling.
Oh my God! How did you hear about that? Yes,
Make out
I was that baby.
Make out scenes.
I am that baby that was in diapers on the counters. Yes, I think that is why I'm apparently so sociable, because everybody picked me up. There was a little old lady, I remember her, a little lady, I can't remember her name now. She would see me as a big person or anywhere in the credit union, walking on the street and said, don't play this style with me, because I used to hold you as a baby in the bakery. My grandmother would let her hold me. But I think growing up in the bakery, some people have us, being a part of this particular legacy, some people have a thing about, Chee Mooke, don't worry, you're safe anywhere. And it's almost like if Trinidad had some kind of royalty, we would be part of it. Anywhere I go, I could try to go online somewhere way far from Port where I think nobody knows me, and somebody will say, hey, you looking kind of familiar with my voice, because they would have heard me on an interview on the radio, and they will start singing the jingle band. So it is very heartwarming to know that we are so considered by the nation, that people think of us in this way, and they seem to protect us, and they defend us down to the last, it seems.
Now, will you say that?
Sorry?
You say that, and I am now thinking to myself that I had to struggle to not sing that line from the jingle. I made sure I was saying it. I wasn't singing it. But in terms of like having such a legacy that is steeped, is entrenched, what kind of things in terms of pros and cons are there with regard to using alternative flours? Is it practical? Because one of the things I think about is it going to, and you spoke about it a little bit, will it hold the same way? Does it taste the same way? Does it feel the same way in your mouth? And are these things that get you a little nervous in terms of like when you're making those decisions, when you're doing that experimentation, moving towards new products, or the same products but with slightly different ingredients?
Well, there's two things. When we add like the coconut and cassava, these are actually grated products. This is not flour. When we come to doing things like using like coconut flour or cassava flour, as the concept of flour is a fine powder, right? But wheat flour, as I spoke earlier, has gluten in it, which helps give the bread the kind of volume and the shape that we get with our bread as we know it. And we may have to add things like baking powder or baking soda. We could try yeast, but those items don't have gluten in them, so we have to just experiment. Today we had a brief discussion on Facebook again, where I put up a post about trying to preempt what's going to happen and trying to secure our food service, see about our food security in Trinidad. And the volume is kind of almost unimaginable. People would not understand. For us, we use 40 to 50 100-pound bags of flour every day. This is about 5,000 pounds of flour. This is just one bakery, one day. Imagine for the whole week, we're talking about that's 30,000, and the month. And so in terms of Chee Mooke Bakery alone, we need almost 1.5 million pounds of flour a year. We are going to have to pulverize everything in sight to satisfy all of the bakeries and all of the, not just bakeries, because you have other people, you have biscuit people, you have the roti people, you have doubles, you have people doing other little pastries and patisseries and desserts. We're going to need a lot of items. We're talking potatoes, dashing, yam, cassava, corn, anything else that we can use, maybe dried pumpkin, carrots. We are going to need every single root crop converted into flours that we then going to need the research and development aspect to how are we going to make, as we both touched on, how are we going to make bread out of these flours, again, which do not have gluten in them. There's a big scale, there's a big potential, there's an opportunity for some serious revenue. It is an area that Trinidad needs to be serious about. We could be the capital of alternative flours in the Caribbean and this part of the world, but we don't have the landmass to put out that kind of that volume of produce that we need to make that kind of flour. So it's a very serious issue. We saw it come in at the beginning of the pandemic with the shutdowns and the initial blockages of the supply chain initially, and then now with the Ukraine-Russia war, that's another, because those are our two big meat producers, and they would start hoarding for their own community, their own societies. Anybody who is who needs wheat in that kind of volume, they will start hoarding, and they have started hoarding. You know, and so Trinidad, if we need to continue having our delightful, you know, varieties of bread, and we have a bread mouth here, if we have to be able to either change our palates or come up with alternative sources. We have here, I mean, I have a cousin who's in Maruga doing the Maruga Hill rice, and there's a small plug for my cousin Mark Progeny. He has done some work on working on the baking flour from the hill rice. So that is one source, but again, the volume that we need, I don't. Even though we say yes, Mark, let's try this thing. Can he give us? Can we be sure of getting 1.5 million pounds of rice flour every year for the foreseeable future? And that's just us alone. What about the other bakeries? I mean, we have other bakeries who are bigger than Chee Mooke. We are saying 5,000 a day. I'm pretty sure somebody else might be using 50,000 a day. You understand? So are we going to be pulverizing mangoes too, and zabukas and breadfruit? We have to start doing those experiments. You know, like yesterday. If we are serious about if we want to continue, because we need to, if we have to save this entire industry, it is a serious thing that we need to engage in, like from now, if not yesterday.
And you say that, and there's so many points that I can pick from, and you say we have a bread mouth. I have people who used to call me brethren at a point in time because we're just flour power we're dealing with. But I also like the fact you make the distinction between what flour is, as opposed to saying, okay, well, we're grating these other things. So is it maybe a matter, part of the research and development, using a little less flour? Yes, flour is still being used to bind these ingredients, but then you have these other things coming into play, be it root crops or things like the pumpkin and other things that you're talking about. But moving forward, what are some of the things that you want to see? And actually we have about a minute. Just talk to me about change in palate again, please, because I think that is one of the most important things at this point in time. Said from somebody who, every time I see a panel van, I still hoping that they have milk biscuit.
Oh my God, and that's not everybody making them anymore. People have, like that, that's one thing. People have lost the palate for milk biscuits. We used to make a lot of milk biscuits, and remember milk cake and milk biscuits, and now we actually don't make any. If we make any, is only special orders, and that is it. We have a recipe that my grandmother used to make, but that is no longer an item that people ask for. Changing the palate is, I think there's two things. We need to decide that we want to change the palate, and then we need to start putting out the items in small amounts to people. We have the school feeding program where we can start with the children, and then try, I mean, we're going to have, I don't know, is basically deciding and putting out items for people to understand we need to do this as a matter of survival in terms of securing Trinidad's food security. It is not going to be easy. We may have a battle, but it's something that we need to do. And a lot of it is going to people deciding this is what we have to do. It's like we suddenly find out you have high blood pressure, you have to stop eating salt. You have to change your palate because you go dead.
And if we don't make that choice, somebody is going to choose for us if we are around to make it. But I want to thank you very much, and especially that last point in terms of starting with the children, and I think that is something that we want to follow up on. But Nathalie Phillips, we want to thank you so much, and on behalf of the entire TTT News team, this has been In Depth with me, Dike Rostant. Thank you for joining us.